Similar to Turiel, the psychologist Kohlberg postulated that moral psychology crucially involved reasoning and maturely balancing conflicting moral values. He proposed that people proceed through a series of stages of development of moral reasoning, which produces increasingly mature moral behavior. The first stage is pre-conventional, where the reasoning reflects obedience to authority and self-interest. The second stage, conventional, where the reasoning reflects conformity and a concern about law and order above all. The post-conventional stage is when people demonstrate the capacity to understand the importance of social contracts, agreements, oaths that people hold, and society keeps in order to have order. Principled conscience is finally the last stage, and that's where a person weighs competing moral commitments. Oftentimes, moral commitments conflict. We care about social contracts, laws, family members, loves, and we want to stay true to our core moral values and principles, such as do no harm. And that's often not easy to do, and that's where our principled conscience comes in to help us mediate these situations. Interestingly, Kohlberg's stages of moral development have been found to be tangled up with political orientation, which puts into question their validity as measures of moral reasoning in general, as opposed to indicators of political ideals. First, Kohlberg's post-conventional morality stage was found to be more likely in liberals, suggesting principled conscience is either not a conservative phenomenon or this measure can't really tell us about it. Suggesting the latter, when conservative students who typically got lower scores than liberals were told to respond like a left-winger, their responses were at the level of left-wing students' responses at that higher stage. Critics saw these results and they said, that final stage of moral development in this model might be vacuous, and perhaps this entire model is invalid if the instrument suggests that our conservative friends, family, and neighbors do not have morally legitimate and honorable moral reasoning taking place, or they regularly function using some kind of immature moral development. So the characterization of optimal moral reasoning was just not working. Haidt and Graham's work serves to broaden the moral domain, or what counts as moral. The endeavor to understand morality beyond educated liberal Westerners has involved research with a range of participants, some of whom showed interesting patterns when they were asked about what counts as moral. Haidt did research in India, Brazil, the United States, and in particular with people who were more conservative and low SES. People in these groups were more likely to legitimize moral concerns about loyalty to group and country, hierarchy, roles, purity, and sanctity. One conservative participant asked to define morality in an early descriptive study noted morality as having a system that protects the social institutions of family, community, and country. Broadening the moral domain might make it theoretically more accurate, but how can we put that theory to the test? How can we measure moral systems in this new way? Previously, harm and fairness violations were all that qualified as morally relevant. Jesse Graham and colleagues presented their massive validation of that instrument in 2011 with the Moral Foundations Questionnaire. And this instrument examines the extent to which people really endorse the moral values in the different moral foundations outside of harm and fairness. So the Moral Foundations Questionnaire measures the degree to which people endorse the 5 foundations of care or prevention of harm, fairness, loyalty, obedience to authority or respect, and purity. These values map onto political orientation in a fairly systematic way. Individualizing values of care and fairness they're endorsed similarly across the political spectrum. You can see from very liberal people to very conservative people, there's not too much change in how much people are endorsing care and fairness. Binding values are higher in more right-wing individuals. They're endorsed to the same extent as those classic liberal values of harm and fairness in these right-wing individuals. But binding values are specifically devalued by more left-wing liberal individuals. Interestingly, the researchers discovered that this pattern, where being more left-wing is associated with higher endorsement of care and fairness values than binding values, and being more right-wing is associated with higher endorsement of binding values, it seems to persist around the world. And it actually dwarfs East-West cultural differences that they also found. So this political difference was not limited to just the United States. Here's the last practice question. Mark refused to enter a war zone with the platoon he was leading because he believed there were civilians present. Mark violated one moral foundation and promoted another. Which did he violate? 1. Loyalty to the in-group. 2. Respect for authority. 3. Prevention of harm. 4. Reducing injustice. The best answer for this question is 2. He violated the moral foundation of respect for authority. He upheld the foundation of prevention of harm. And the question doesn't really fit as well with the moral foundations of loyalty to in-group and fairness and justice. Please be in touch with any questions. I hope this recap was helpful. On Tuesday, October 6th, please go to Canvas, quizzes, and the quiz will be available at 10 a.m. It'll be available from 10 a.m. to 10:45. Thanks.